Welcome to the Talk of the Town podcast. As seen on social media today, we have 3 brand new signings at Dunstable Town. I'm here with Dunstable Town manager Steve O'Reilly. Steve, 3 new faces in the door, mate. Tell us about them.
Yeah, I mean, well, one's a very familiar face, certainly to this club. So Lewis Smith is coming back. Outstanding for us at the start of last season. Came in kind of just actually after the season had started. From the minute he came in, brought a lot of control in terms of in the midfield area for us, a lot of quality. Kind of really helped set the tempo in terms of how we play. And obviously, it was a real shame that we lost him to Hendon around Christmas time. But we kept in pretty regular contact, and I know that he really enjoyed his football, here, and obviously the style of football they try and play, but just the club and the environment and the group. We're something that we were discussing, and when the opportunity arose that we'd bring him back to the club, I really jumped at the chance to be able to do that, and likewise, I think Lewis was excited to come back for us, and I think that he obviously recognised the progress that we made from when he first came in to where we are now. He's a lad who's familiar, obviously, with the group, so that learning curve that you've got to kind of go through when you add new players is obviously not going to be as steep for him. And then I think that as we continue to add quality around a player like him, and as the lads who we're obviously going to retain this year, which I know that we'll speak about a bit later in the week as we go along. Super exciting, and I think that will bring even more from him. So yeah, delighted to get Lewis in first and foremost. And I know that he was a very popular player here amongst supporters and players alike. So yeah, he's a really great addition first and foremost.
Hadley and Montel as well joining us as we announced on social media today. What can you tell us about them, mate? What attracted you to these kind of players?
Yeah, I mean, look, no secret really for us for last season that we didn't probably create enough goals and at the top end of the pitch. I think defensive record was obviously pretty good on the most part. I've had a few blips along the way, but really once we kind of established what our setup and our structure looked like, and we got in the right players in the right positions defensively, we were always there. Maybe just felt that we didn't maybe quite have enough directness at the top end of the pitch, ability to maybe beat players one-on-one. And these are 2 players that are going to bring that in abundance really for us. Hadley's a player that I've worked with in the past over obviously at Harpenden. I thought both games where we played against him last season, he was excellent. He scored in the game here, really good finish, and he brings that to the table. Electrifying pace, and again, maybe something that, Sammy brought to us and Liam, but maybe, in other areas, we maybe just didn't have quite enough pace in the team, and it's certainly something that we identified that we'd look to add. And so, Hadley will definitely bring that, like I say, eye for a goal, really good work ethic, really good attitude. Good trainer, very committed, very fit, he's fit and he's available. And yeah, he'll give us something different at the top end of the pitch. And, he's a young lad, but he's experienced for his age at this level. But there's a lot more potential for him. Like I say, he had a bit of a spell at Barton last year as well, so he's got a bit of that step 4 experience. And I know that it's something that he wants to go and get back to. He had his best goal scoring season for Harpenden last year, but privately we've discussed, he's got some other targets, and we've got some targets that we're wanting to hit this season. But he's a good character. He knows Alf obviously a little bit from his time at Harpenden as well. And he's super excited to get going, and I think that's a big thing as well. I think he sees the opportunity here, and it's a really good fit. So Hadley's really exciting. And then, Montel, another really, really talented player, has played at a good level, older shot in the past, and, had maybe kind of injuries and different things that happened to him that kind of moved him in different directions, but had a really excellent season last year for Langley once he was settled, and had a really good goal record. I think something like 15 in 20 games, can play in any of the forward positions really, and again, has that ability to kind of get at players. And, I think that at times, there's always, you obviously know how we want to play, and, we like to get the ball on the ground. We like to be able to pass, and we, to keep the ball moving. That's important. But there's other times where actually a little bit of directness and, I think for fullbacks, these types of players and, the additions of, the Lucas and the other players that we've got in the group as well, suddenly, we feel like fullbacks and, defensively, we're going to give a lot of different problems to than maybe what we've been able to in the past. So, yeah, these are really exciting players for us. And I think that, it speaks to, and I think the other additions that you'll see probably over the next few weeks as well, it really speaks to being really targeted in terms of what we wanted to add this year. nucleus of the squad was in a good place, but there were specific areas that we feel like that we needed to improve upon to take the next step this season. I'm really comfortable that these guys are going to be able to do that for us.
Yeah, obviously we're going to sit down with the new lads in pre-season. What was the message that you had to got across to these lads to bring them into Dunstable Town?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like I say, Lewis was obviously, a bit more of a straightforward one, and I think it was just really aligning, what he wants from his football and, what we can offer. And again, I think that, he kind of already understood what that was. Look, I think that we did a lot of good things from a very difficult starting point last season. And really one of the things that I kind of preached towards that was, pointing at, yes, we improved as the season went along, but actually it used still a lot of the core of the same sort of players. And so we're not really, and I'm not the type of manager who kind of likes to really chop and change a lot through the season and, we're like using 40, 50 players. That's not really my style. I think that it's about a very cohesive group, a really good dressing room. And I think those things are what people have seen. And then the opportunity really for these lads to come in and make a difference. And as I said, I think that, it's about being targeted in terms of what you want to do and who you want to be able to go and bring in. So, it's not just a case of me having a conversation with them, just going, I want to sign you. It's about being really clear about kind of what that role looks like. Again, Hadley is a little bit easier as well to a certain extent because, he's got a good idea in terms of kind of, again, how I work and the kind of style of football that I want to be able to play and where he would fit in with that. But like I say, it's been very intentional in terms of what they're going to bring to the team, and being really clear about what that role is. The club, from my perspective, should sell itself. It's a fantastic club. The support we got, the best supported team in the league last season. We had a good second half of the season, not great, and we've got areas that we need to improve upon, but those things sell itself. The infrastructure that we've got, our training pitch is going to be a brand new training pitch next season. The facilities, the quality of everything that we've got, it's never an easy sell because, what's good about the players that we've been speaking to this summer is that there's competition for them, and that's understandable. And you want players that are in demand. But certainly, maybe compared to where we were 12 months ago, the sell's better, it's easier because, they've seen what we've been able to do over the last 12 months and, how we've moved the group forward. But yeah, really kind of throwing that carrot to these boys now as well in terms of, helping us take that next step.
I know when I spoke to you just at the end of last season, you said to me that you're not keen on bringing too many in, but you knew that we need to improve. Yeah. Obviously, with these three now, can you foresee many more additions to the squad before we start on July the 26th?
Yeah, I mean, there will be, and naturally that'll happen. And there'll be a couple that will move on as well. That's just the nature of football. But I don't really think too many, which is a positive for us. There are still a couple of areas that I feel like we need to add. So I'd expect us to add a few more. There'll be good competition in the squad. Again, kind of like what I was saying then, really, in terms of not carrying too big of a squad. We probably got to the end of last season and not that we were bare bones, but we were tight really in terms of the squad at the end of the season, and probably if we'd have been a little bit closer to being in contention, maybe the last 8, 9, 10 games, we might have looked to have gone and added one or two at that stage. But actually the priority for me was, giving those lads who'd been with us the opportunity to get more exposure and more minutes and to play more football. By nature, we want to improve this year, the competition we want in the squad. And as I said, there's just a couple of areas that I still think that we could do with adding, quality to. It's not now the case of just adding a body, and these are not players who we're kind of wondering what they'll bring to us. Whereas maybe last year in pre-season, there was a little bit of that, we needed to get bodies in, we had to take risks a little bit more with certain players. So look, conversations are ongoing with, like I say, maybe a handful of players, no more than that really, and feeling pretty good about where that'll head towards us. But already, and from the group that we had last year, feeling very confident that we're going to be in a good position at the start of the season. It's just about adding those couple, that'll tip us over the edge. But we spoke about this last summer. The team that you've got at the start of pre-season is not necessarily the team that you end at pre-season. And you will add quality players as the season goes along. You only have to look at last year, and Lewis was one that I mentioned. He wasn't actually a player that was on our radar until the season had already started, and that opportunity presented itself. And he made a big difference to us. We added an Archie, we added a Liam last year. Obviously, Alfie came back. So you do want to add those players as you go along. We've got exciting players like Malik, who obviously got that last little run at the end of the season. That's going to be like a new signing for us, and I know again what he's going to bring to the table. So yeah, look, me. It's I don't want to disrupt the group. I think it's about, enhancing the group really more than anything. They've got it's a great culture. It's a really good environment amongst it. And, one of the things that certainly I've kind of got feedback from the players, who we're keeping for next season and who are going to be with us is, how much they enjoy being part of the club and how much they're being part of the group. So when you add players, that's another thing you've got to be really mindful of, is that, okay, well, how will they fit in with the group and what will they add to it? But yeah, it's certainly a much better position than we were in 12 months ago in terms of what those conversations look like. And yeah, these are the first 3. There'll be a few more, and it will put us in a really good position when we're ready to start at the end of July, when we start the season.
Yeah, obviously the season starts July 26th. We're back to work 2 weeks Tuesday for pre-season. How far are you along with your pre-season preparation? It's come around quick. We're back training in 2 weeks. I was with some of the boys at the weekend, and they couldn't believe that we were back. We're talking about playing football again in a couple of weeks. How are you doing with your preparation?
Yeah, I mean, really good. Like I say, I think that we've all the structure and all the pre-season friendlies and all that type of stuff is there and ready. From a coaching side of things, we're just working on and making sure that the balance in terms of what we're doing over that period of time is right. You've got to kind of cater around holidays and stuff from players and, all those bits and pieces, obviously what we're going to do around the conditioning side of the players over that period of time. But no, really, really good. And I think that, I'm really fortunate that we've got, the likes of yourselves, but, the rest of the people that are behind the scenes here as well, that as much as possible, I can kind of focus on the football aspects of it. And there's a lot that you have to do with that. And, the recruitment side of things is, any manager will probably tell you, at this stage of the season, you're on the phone a lot, right? And, you have a lot of conversations and you're trying to, persuade people and trying to sell the story in terms of what you want to be able to do. And that actually does take quite a lot of time when you're trying to balance that in, everyday life as well. So really fortunate that the rest of the things at this club kind of move forward and continue to be able to do that. And I can focus as much as possible on the football side of things. So yeah, we're in a really good place, really excited about, what that's going to look like. It's going to be a hard pre-season, all football related, we know what that looks like, but, we'll push the boys as we go, as we always do. But I feel like we're in a really good place.
Steve, no doubt I will sit down with you again many times before the season starts, mate. But thanks for your time, buddy. Cheers, mate. Check out the rest of our content this week. We've got some really cool stuff dropping on Friday and Saturday. But till next time, everybody, up the Mighty Blues.